In the Philippine Sea, east of Luzon, a sonar operator aboard the USS Ronald Reagan froze mid-sentence. His screen showed a trace that didn't belong. Seconds later, the proof erupted through the waves. A Chinese submarine surfacing inside the carrier's protective bubble. This wasn't just poor navigation. It was a disaster in the making. A Yuan-class diesel-electric boat forced up by dying batteries had picked the worst possible place to breathe right next to America's most heavily defended aircraft carrier. On the Reagan's bridge, no one panicked. Escorts tightened their formation. Helicopters dipped sonar. The carrier kept speed calm and steady. But here's the catch. Every second that submarine stayed on the surface, it wasn't intimidating the U.S. Navy. It was giving itself away. Radars logged its profile. Sensors soaked up its acoustic trail. And the crew of the Ronald Reagan had just been handed an intelligence jackpot. China's sub thought it had made a statement. In reality, it had made a mistake of a historic scale. First, it was just a whisper on the screen. A faint low-frequency pulse, so deep it almost blended into the background ocean noise. The sonar operator aboard the USS Shoop, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer escorting the carrier, narrowed his eyes and marked it. One blip, then another. Bearing steady, depth about 120 m, speed just under 8 knots. Classic signature of a diesel-electric sub trying to stay quiet. He called it out. The Combat Information Center came alive. Screens lit up as data flowed from multiple ships. Within minutes, the contact wasn't just a sonar trace. It was a three-dimensional picture. The Reagan Strike Group had a shadow, and it wasn't supposed to be there. The U.S. Carrier Strike Group is more than just a big ship with jets. Around the Reagan, the formation looked like layers of armor. Ticonderoga-class cruisers and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers provided long-range missile defense. E-2D Hawkeye aircraft circled high above, feeding the fleet a radar picture that stretched hundreds of miles. And down low, the real bloodhounds, MH-60R Seahawks. One of them, call sign Knight 614, launched from the destroyer's deck. The Romeo isn't just a helicopter. It's a flying submarine hunter. Its AQS-22 dipping sonar is lowered like a microphone into the ocean, reaching where ship-mounted sonars can't. Add to that the ANAPS 153 radar for periscope detection and the ANAUC 210 electronic support suite, and you've got yourself an airborne vacuum cleaner for sub-signatures. Within minutes, the Seahawk confirmed it. The sub was moving cautiously, hugging a thermal layer for cover, but it couldn't hide the truth. Its batteries were draining, and sooner or later, it would have to break cover. On the Reagan's bridge, officers didn't flinch. They'd seen this play before. Chinese diesel subs often push into international waters, shadowing carriers to prove that they can. But the rules of the game are unforgiving. Diesel boats are like runners holding their breath. They can sprint in silence, but eventually they have to gasp for air. And when that moment comes, well, the U.S. Navy is waiting. The sonar techs sharpened their track. Data poured into the fleet computers. Cavitation patterns, propeller blade count, shaft revolutions per minute. To outsiders, it was just an echo. To the Navy, it was a fingerprint, a way to classify and catalog exactly which submarine was down there. The message was clear. The Reagan Strike Group wasn't surprised. They weren't scrambling. They were watching, listening, and waiting for the inevitable. Because every submarine encounter has the same turning point. Either the boat stays hidden, or it surfaces. And when it surfaces in the wrong place next to the wrong ship, the advantage flips instantly. It happened faster than anyone expected. At 0704 local time, the sub broke the surface. 1 second, the sea was empty. The next, a dark sail tore through the waves, water cascading down its tower. Lookouts aboard the Reagan called it instantly. Submarine surfaced portside, range 3 miles. This wasn't a stealth maneuver. This was desperation. Diesel-electric boats, even the modern Yuan-class with air-independent propulsions, can't stay under forever. A patrol that stretches too long means batteries deplete, oxygen runs thin, and the captain faces a brutal choice. Surface and risk detention, or stay down and lose propulsion. On this morning, the choice was forced. The first American eyes on it weren't pilots or radar operators. It was the deck crew, sailors scanning the horizon while handling routine carrier business. To them, it was surreal, watching a Chinese sub climb out of the ocean like a beast in the wrong cage. Radio protocol snapped into place on an open frequency. A calm American voice carried across the water. Unidentified submarine. You are operating in the vicinity of a United States carrier strike group. Acknowledge and maintain safe separation. No weapons powered on. No missiles were armed. Just procedure. Cool and deliberate because U.S. doctrine is clear. Do not escalate unless directly threatened. Meanwhile, the escorts tightened their scream. The destroyer USS Shoup shifted starboard, presenting a defensive wall between the carrier and the surfaced boat. Another Arleigh Burke class, the USS Mustin angled to cover the sub's other flank. Overhead, the Seahawk covered its tipping sonar still in the water, now recording every turn of the sub's propellers as it tried to hold position at periscope depth. The sub's captain may have hoped the surfacing would pass as routine. Instead, it turned into a spectacle, one that transformed his mission into an open book. What looked at first glance like a show of presence was actually the start of something else entirely. Because in modern naval warfare, the most dangerous moment for a sub isn't when it fires a torpedo. It's when it's forced to breathe. Every minute that submarine stayed on the surface was another minute the U.S. Navy turned into gold. What looked like a harmless silhouette was in fact a broadcasting tower of secrets, spilling data into the air and sea. First came the radar profile. Every time the sub's navigation radar swept the horizon, American receivers caught the pulse. Frequency, pulse width, repetition rate, all of it was logged. To analysts, those signals are like fingerprints. Catalog them once, and the next time that radar switches on, you know exactly what platform is out there. Then came the acoustics. The MH-60R hovering overhead lowered another sonobuoy. It didn't need to search anymore. It was now collecting each churn of the propellers, each vibration from the diesel engines running at recharge speed, each rush of cooling pumps, all of it unique sounds. The Navy's acoustic libraries thrive on these details. Years from now, when another submarine of the same class tries to sneak through, operators will pull up these recordings and match them instantly. Electronic warfare suites on the escorts added more layers. The ANSLQ-32 systems didn't just passively listen, they dissected. A SATCOM burst toward Beijing logged. A shortwave transmission between the sub and its coastal command center captured. Even the quirks in the modulation. The small imperfections in the transmitter hardware became part of the file. For the Americans, this was the jackpot. No missiles fired, no torpedoes launched, just silence and patience, while the other side revealed everything. It wasn't the first time either. In 2006, a Chinese Yuan-class submarine famously surfaced near the USS Kitty Hawk, stunning observers, but handing U.S. intelligence a free collection opportunity. In 2015, a Chinese sub shadowed the USS Ronald Reagan and again ended up giving away patterns that analysts still study. Each show of presence had the same result: data leakage on an industrial scale. Now in 2025, the cycle has repeated. What the sub's captain likely reported as a bold encounter, the Reagan's crew saw as training. The real-world exercise that expanded their knowledge base without a risk. Inside the Reagan CIC, no one raised their voice. The ops officer simply noted, "Contact has surfaced recording data." Calm, clinical, almost bored. Because in naval warfare, you don't win by shouting louder. You win by knowing more. And right now, the U.S. Navy knew a lot more than it did 15 minutes ago. The Chinese sub thought it was holding the initiative. In truth, it had walked into a trap, one that required no bait, no chase, only discipline. For the next 10 minutes or so, every ship in the strike group treated the surfaced submarine like a coiled snake. It wasn't moving fast. It wasn't pointing weapons, but it was unpredictable. And unpredictability at sea is a recipe for disaster. The escorts adjusted their screens. USS Shoup held position off the subsport bow, while USS Mustin kept to starboard. Both destroyers ready to block any sudden maneuver. Their vertical launch cells were armed, but weapons tight. The captain's standing order was clear: do not escalate unless threatened. Overhead, the Seahawk just circled lazily, but its sensors were definitely locked in. If the sub attempted a crash dive, the helicopter would mark the exact bearing and drop torpedoes in seconds. The crew was intense, but they were very focused. This was exactly what they had trained for. On the Reagan, flight operations never even paused. Jets roared off the deck, their thunder rolling across the sea. To the watching submarine crew, it must have been pretty overwhelming. A single carrier already meant dominance. Surrounded by escorts and with constant air cover, it was untouchable. But discipline was the real weapon here. One wrong radio call, one trigger pulled too quickly, and this standoff could spiral into an international incident. The Americans knew it, and so did the Chinese. That's why the tone of the radios stayed calm, even sterile. Unidentified submarine, maintain position. You are being monitored. The reply was silence. No acknowledgement, no defiance. Just the awkward presence of a boat that had surfaced in the worst place possible. Every second ticked by like an eternity. For sailors watching from the carrier's decks, the tension wasn't fear of attack. It was the razor-thin margin for error. A sudden turn of the rudder, a misread signal light, even a radar lock could be mistaken as hostile. And when you're surrounded by Aegis destroyers, mistakes get punished instantly. Yet nothing happened. The U.S. crews did what they do best. Waited, recorded, and let the other side sweat. By the time the submarine began edging away, the intelligence harvest was already complete. Its attempt at intimidation had fizzled. What remained was a case study in how discipline beats drama. When the sub finally slipped beneath the waves again, the Reagan strike group didn't celebrate. They didn't need to. The victory wasn't about sinking an enemy. It was about learning. And in modern naval warfare, knowledge is the absolute sharpest weapon. Diesel-electric boats like the Chinese Yuan-class are dangerous hunters in shallow waters. Silent on battery, armed with torpedoes and anti-ship missiles, they can threaten even a carrier. But their Achilles heel is endurance. Air-independent propulsion extends patrol time. Yet physics still demand oxygen, battery cycles, and eventually surfacing. Every time they do, they risk becoming a live exhibit for U.S. censors. This wasn't the first reminder, and it won't be the last. The lesson for Beijing is probably pretty uncomfortable. Intimidation stunts may play well at home, but they backfire actually out at sea. Against a disciplined network strike group, every close encounter becomes a data gift. For Washington, the takeaway is simpler. Hold fire, stay calm, and let the opponent expose themselves. Silence can be deadlier than gunfire. Now, here's a real question for you. If you were the sub's captain, staring at your battery gauges dropping, would you risk surfacing near a carrier or dive deeper and hope no one hears you? Now, if you were standing on the Reagan's bridge when the submarine surfaced, would you have fired a warning shot, or would you have trusted your ship's defenses to handle it? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see where you guys stand. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves true maritime stories. And as always, if you want to go a step further and support the channel directly, please join the fleet. You get loyalty badges, priority replies, and more. Because remember, if you're servicing near a U.S. carrier, that's the fastest way to drown your own secrets. I'll see you in the next one.